here's the thing I've been hopeful for. Here's the thing I've been curious about, because when it comes down to especially the Sandbox MMO, being able to give you that kind of experience in your hand, well, I think that experience can also extend to the modern MMO, especially the Sandbox MMO. And we're starting to see that, and we're starting to see that conversation. We haven't seen it delivered yet, but cloud streaming, especially for the MMO, it already gets over the hurdle of, what do you mean I have to be online to play this game? Because if you do not want to play an online game, there's no selling you the MMO. Like, you've already drawn your line in the sand. The MMO requires that connection. Then it's a matter of, do you have the bandwidth to stream? Same thing I'd love to see brought in with Final Fantasy 11. Like, why is that game not streamable in the browser? Let's go. That technology exists. I could stream that to my phone in theory, right? But with something like PAX Day, to bring up a new sandbox done up by the teams that really want to return to that sandbox style, but with Unreal Engine, I think 5 is their engine, with the concept of streaming to mobile, and Throne of Liberty is also in that vein. It's not a game that actually runs on your phone. It's a game that is pushed to your phone, and it has that design philosophy and concept, so that if I'm sitting here at the end of a long day and I don't want to go over to the gaming PC and set up for a long gaming session, if I just want to level up my logging, if I just want to interact with the market, if I just want to do a handful of tasks, the thing I've always advocated for is, like, I wish Final Fantasy 14 would run on the Switch in a cloud version, even if I'm not playing a dungeon. Let me, like, for crafting and gathering and doing just a handful of things, there are these experiences that should not necessarily always require that you have like the preferred way that people would enjoy and play the game, opening that up to that flexibility. And so imagine old school RuneScape, but from a graphic visual fidelity of Unreal Engine 5, but still able to be pushed to your phone, which on your phone you have the internet. And so it's just a matter of that you have the bandwidth to push that game to your phone, so that you can go on that run, level up logging, that you can just jump in for a brief couple of minutes and have a touch point on this virtual world that you're now a part of. What do you think, Chris?
I think RuneScape is uniquely positioned to take advantage of this. Browser-based MMOs, things like this, like what you're talking about is technically possible. Like, the system specs of phones are amazing compared to some of these games that are 10 or more years old. And so these games that are designed to run on like an unplugged in microwave, like, they will absolutely run on our phones. You could run 25 instances of WoW on your phone. Like, it's fine. But like, WoW is a tab target hotkey driven game. You have hotbars, you have rotations. The combat system is about pushing these buttons in orders, especially when you talk about games with limited global cooldowns, off global cooldown buttons like Final Fantasy 14. And the phone at this point, there was a time when it was the Nokia brick and you were using your little numpad to like steer your little snake around or whatever. And that's fine. And that probably would have adapted better to something like World of Warcraft. But we didn't, like, BlackBerry didn't win. Who won is these touch screens. I can just touch it. And so the problem with a touch screen is there's really not room for more than, like, do you touch it? Do you touch it with more than one finger? That's it. That's how the interface of a phone works these days. And so that really lends itself to the fact that RuneScape is a click-based MMO, to the point where it drives me nuts on my computer that it's not just defaulted to certain logical hotkeys. It's a lot of clicking. And so the phone experience is almost identical to a small screen version of the PC experience. It's almost identical. And anything that's clunky about mobile on RuneScape was already clunky. Like, it was already clunky on PC because it's a game, it's an old game. And there are things about it that are just clunky. You have to be careful when you remove quality of, like, when you start to chase quality of life though, because if you fix quality of life on something that just makes the game suck, you've made the game better. But if you fix quality of life on something that is actually what gave us a sense of achievement, a sense of accomplishment, and you remove the friction, then you've made the game worse. And both of them are communicated in the form of complaints on the forums. So when you look at all the complaints on the forums, there are people that say, I want mounts in New World. I personally think that adding mounts to New World is a mistake, and there's no going back. I understand why you want to run faster. I also understand that that's why things like the trains feel really like, wow, and I really don't want to die. Like, and I want there to be a combined tent, and somebody sets up the tent, and a bunch of people toss logs and flint on it because we need this recharge point because it would take me forever to get back here. And so, like, I think there's something about New World that feels very special in how large it is, and they have fast travel points that are already appropriately spaced, and you run faster on roads, and your inventory is weight based, so you might want to go back to town. And by buying a home, you get this free Hearthstone type thing that I can go back, and I can have up to 3 of those, as well as my main one, and I can pay to reduce the cooldown on that one, and it's cheaper than actual teleports. And like, there's a lot about the movement of New World that is like very carefully thought of and tuned and perfected. And like the removal of Azoth cost from teleportation is like I notice it on the days that it costs 20 Azoth versus the days that it's free. I notice it. Mounts remove all of that. And so I think old school RuneScape is in a special spot because they've really gone back and said, there's not going to be a lot of quality of life.
Yeah.
Because we can't identify exactly where the line is between fun and not fun. And so we're just not even going to play with it. Like, we're not even going to mess with it. Could the interface be better? Absolutely. But along the way, what if we accidentally damage some of the fun?
Yeah.
And so I think RuneScape's done a really good job of kind of preserving that.
That's been the constant debate, especially within Final Fantasy XI, as just a counterpoint that would be parallel to old school RuneScape, is that if they were to remake that, if they were to remaster that in some way, what quality of life features don't break the magic that makes Final Fantasy XI in terms of how it is now, or how it used to be with private servers, unique and special. And that in and of itself is a fine line, because one of the things that, like you mentioned, especially with mounts breaking the world, like if they ever add flying mounts where you can just fly around New World, like that is not just adding mounts breaking the game, that's fundamentally breaking one of the very unique features of the game, which is its world and its size and its scale. And so there's interesting ways, like we see that impact in Final Fantasy 14. And if you were to go and try and take that away, it ends up causing way more stress than, if they had never added it in the first place.
You can't take it away once you add it. That's it.
Right.
It's permanent. WoW tried to take away flying and people got livid. The Sky Scale in Guild Wars, it's my favorite quest line I've ever been on. It's my favorite large scale project I've ever worked on in an MMO. And I absolutely hate that I have that now.
Yeah.
It is my favorite thing I've ever done as far as consuming the process to get my Sky Scale. And now that I have it, I hate when I get to somewhere and my solution is I'll just get on my flying mount. And their flying mount is heavily restricted compared to what the term flying mount means in games like Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft. And it still feels like the game lost something.
Yeah. You lose that world and then exploration. And that's where it'll be interesting to see how it plays out when it's added in to New World, because like I'm hoping, because one of the things I know a lot of people are like, oh, we got to get mounts. And it's like, well, is there a way that we could add in mounts that make the game better, like that make the game more interesting? And I think when we start to bring in any MMO comparison for discussion, like Guild Wars 2 is the developers, like it's the gamer's pipe dream of what is the best MMO out there? Most likely Guild Wars 2. What's the least played out of the most best out of Guild Wars 2? Like there's, for some reason, like they have these really great systems, but yet in terms of mind share and communication, that's one of the games that it's like, oh yeah, like I should jump back into Guild Wars 2 this week, and then I don't, and it's like, okay, well maybe next week I'll jump back into it. But Guild Wars 2's mounts add something to the game and how they travel and how they move and how they like change things up, and they're not a million of them, so it's going to be interesting to see like what New World does with those, especially by adding in mounts, etc. Personally speaking, I like gliding. Like I think gliding ends up being an additive as opposed to just taking something away, especially in games that have such verticality. And then you can then level up level up your ability to glide further in the world itself. I think that would be something unique to see, instead of just pure flying, right? Instead of just like, and I'm here and now I'm taking off into the world, to go explore. So